Hi students, how's it going? It's Pete Posner here at Big Break English, your British English teacher. And today's lesson is an IELTS Band 8 vocabulary lesson on education and learning. In the last lesson, we did a lesson, a vocabulary lesson on education, specifically in the context of schools. And today, following on from that, we're going to turn our attention to learning languages. And we're going to learn 4 phrasal verbs, okay? Pick up, get by, pass for, and brush up. Okay, and learning this type of vocabulary is going to help you with both speaking and writing in the area of lexical resource. And with regard to writing, if you're interested, you can download my free ebook, 12 Tips for Scoring Higher on IELTS Writing Task 2, down in the description of this video. Okay, let's get on with the lesson. Okay, students, so first I'm going to answer a part 3 IELTS speaking question, okay? And I want you to listen and identify where I used those 4 phrasal verbs, okay? Remember what they were? Pick up, get by, pass for, and brush up, okay? The question is, how do adults learn languages, okay? Well, adults learn languages in many different ways. It's quite a complex question. But for example, a lot of adults, and what I think is a really good way to learn a language is to pick a language up, okay? And you can do this basically by practicing a lot, not necessarily taking always formal lessons, but uh, going and spending some time in an English speaking country if it's English, right? Or watching a lot of television, listening to the radio in the language. For example, recently I read that the Liverpool manager, Jurgen Klopp, picked up English watching the sitcom Friends. Okay, so there's an example for you. And well, another thing I would say on this question is that when you learn a language, you don't need to learn like everything in that language, right? No. Um, a lot of people just need to learn enough of the language to get by in their daily lives. For example, if you work in a company, right, and you have to use English in your job, then you just need to learn the English that you need for the job. Okay, at least as the minimum. Yeah. Another thing is that my advice is to students is not to become obsessed with being perfect, right, and trying to pass for a native speaker. That's impossible unless you learn the language from a very young age. Then you can get like perfect pronunciation, a perfect accent, perfect grammar. Okay, but otherwise, it's really not realistic to try to pass for a native speaker. Okay, and well, finally, I'd like to say that um, some adults they take lessons just to brush up the language, right? So, for example, I have an English student, and recently he took some extra speaking lessons with me because he was going to do some research abroad, so he needed to brush up his English. Okay. So anyway, there's obviously a lot more to say on this topic, but those are a few ideas for you. Okay, students, did you identify the 4 phrasal verbs? The first one, right, was pick up a language. Okay, now notice in the pronunciation here, there's a link. The sounds are linked between those 2 words, right? And the stress goes on the second syllable. Okay, so it's pick up a language. Okay, so this means learn a language by practicing it rather than taking formal lessons. Okay, and the example I gave was the Liverpool manager Jurgen Klopp. Right, so Klopp picked up English watching Friends. Okay, The second phrasal verb was get by. Okay, those two words are stressed equally. Okay, get by. The definition is manage to live, work, etc. using a language. Okay, so for example, people have to learn what they need to get by in their daily lives. Okay, I gave you the example of someone who has to use English in their job, working in a company. Okay, so they may just learn the English they need to get by in that company. Okay. Now the third phrasal verb was pass for. Okay, and notice here that the stress goes on the first syllable, and because of that, the for is actually usually pronounced f, a weak sound. Okay, so for example, and well, this means speak a language at a level where you are accepted as a native. So pass for a native speaker. Okay, so for example, I said that people don't need to become obsessed with acquiring a perfect accent or perfect grammar so that they can pass for a native speaker. Yeah, it's not necessary. Okay. And the fourth phrasal verb, the last one that I used was brush up. There's also a link there. Did you hear that? Two sounds. The end of the last syllable in the first word and the second word. The sounds linked together, and the stress is on the second syllable. Okay, so it's brush up. All right. This means quickly improve a language if you brush up a language, especially when you haven't used it for a long time. Okay, so I gave the example of one of my students, right, who took extra speaking lessons with me to brush up his English before going abroad to do some research. Okay, students, so you learned 4 phrasal verbs today. But before you go, I have 2 questions for you. Okay, the first question is, and these questions, I'd like you to write your answers in the comment section of this video. All right, and the idea is to answer the questions using the phrasal verb. Okay, that way you practice using the phrasal verb and you will then remember it more easily. Okay, that way you will improve your vocabulary. Okay, so the first question, how can you pick up a language without taking formal lessons? Okay, so in what ways? For example, I said that Jurgen Klopp watched Friends. Okay, that's one way to pick up a language. Okay, what other ways can you think of? Okay, and question 2, what do different types of people need to learn in English to get by in the language? Okay, so for example, a waiter, right, needs to learn the food and drink on the menu, right? He or she needs to learn the language necessary to interact with the customers. Okay, so think of some other types of jobs or situations, and how do those people what do those people need to learn to get by in English? Okay, and next lesson, I'm going to do a lesson on the topic of technology. Okay, so IELTS Band 8 vocabulary on technology. All right, and well, if you enjoyed this lesson, please like it, please share it, please subscribe to the channel, and remember to download the free ebook in the description of this video. Okay, students, it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you next time.